Alrighty, welcome to another episode of the One Last Cast podcast. My name is Jonathan. We have Merriel here, and our special guest today is John Liu. Welcome, guys.
Woo! How's it going, everybody?
Big shout out to Nick for always joining us, Phil, Dustin, and Joseph, and also Tina. I appreciate your guys' support. Y'all are always faithful. Y'all are always showing up. Love your support, man. And let's get this show started.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to throw a shout out too. So, actually, last week, the One Last Cast podcast surpassed 1,000 downloads online. So that's a very big accomplishment, and we couldn't have done it without everyone listening. And for those of you who are listening right now via podcast, thank you. And of course, we always welcome your feedback. If you wanted to join us live or leave your feedback on our Facebook page, that's how we mainly do all this communicating with each other. It is facebook.com/One Last Cast podcast. Like I said, just drop us a line or tell us how bad we're doing or how good we're doing. Love to hear it. And also wanted to give a shout out to a couple of our sponsors. Obviously, DSKA, if you're ever looking for a good Facebook group for kayaking, and especially on the Texas Coast, head on over there, and that's a great place to learn. Also, RA Mobile Bait, Chad is doing good things on getting a mobile bait stand up and running. Still a few things that he needs to work on, but that is going to be soon, so be on the lookout for that. Be sure to go like and subscribe to his page. That way you know when he's ready to do that and where he's going to be. That way you can buy live bait from him. And as well as 4A Printing, still coming up with great stuff like the towel here. Of course, I'm still very slow on sending them out to our previous winners. I will actually be going live on around noontime on Friday to do the next giveaway. And of course, after that, I will send out the towels. So be sure to comment and continue doing all these great things you guys are doing. So yeah, let's just dive right into it. Today is part 2 of our talk about night fishing. If you missed part 1, again, you can either download it or go to our Facebook page and you'll see that on there. But yeah, we cover a lot of ground last time, but this time for night fishing, we're actually going to be going into kayaking the green lights and fishing open waters at night. But before that, I wanted to set the stage for this conversation. So now, being an adult, I don't get to fish as night as much anymore because that's when I sleep. But back in the days of college and where I set my college schedule based upon my fishing schedule, I had plenty of time to fish at night. And I was out in Galveston fishing some of the green lights they have there. And this is the story of the biggest trout I ever caught at night. Actually, my biggest trout ever. So it was like 3 a.m. And I think at that point, we already had our 10 trout limit. And we were just playing catch and release at that point. And of course, at night, in dealing with green lights, sometimes you have to kind of weed through 20 dinks before you get that one keeper. I mean, that's just the fact of the matter. But toward 3 a.m., there's actually not as many fish in these lights that we were seeing. And slowly, as time went on, actually the fish kind of disappeared, and we were like, "Oh, it's over. It's time to go home." And my buddy went down one set of canals, and I went down another, just the last one that we were gonna do. And I was fishing a light, and I saw this dink trout that was just floating in it, and I heard this big splash behind me from the other side of the canal. So I went and I checked it out. There's this big green light, bunch of bubbles in the middle. I'm like, I don't know what that was. And up comes this giant redfish, like this giant redfish. And I'm like, oh shoot, that easily beats all the fish I've caught today. Let me try to get it. So I used the small TTF Junior, small black and chartreuse one, the Morning Glory.
Yes.
And I tossed it in. And I burned it across because that's how they're eating it. They're just, if you burned it across, they just came up and ate it. It came up and just sucked it under. I set the hook and it flew right out of its mouth. And I'm like, oh shoot, that's it. It's gone. I missed my chance. It's over. And then it did a 180 and started chasing after this tiny little shrimp, just hopping across the water, and it was still in the light. So I was like, okay, round 2, tossed it in, did the whole thing, burned it, and it sucked it in again. And I set the hook, and I had that redfish on, and it's peeling drag. At the time, I was actually using 1,000 size reels, and it was 10-pound test braid, because I liked the challenge, and I really enjoyed that. But of course, I really wish I didn't have 10-pound test at that point, because it was obviously I made the run for the pilings and stuff like that. So you could feel the line kind of brushing up against it, and I'm like, I'm going to lose this fish, but I managed to pull it out. And after some good fight, I pull it up, and it was a freaking trout. And I'm like, oh my God, that's the biggest trout ever. And I scooped it in the net. And that night, the line coming off my reel was so loud, it actually woke up whoever house that was.
Wow.
And like the light turned on, and I thought that like he was going to come out and yell at me for like waking him up. But the light turned on, and a guy came up from the upper deck, and he's like, "What you got down there?" I'm like, "It's a freaking trout." And he's like, "Holy shit, that's a giant trout." I'm sorry for cursing, but that was, I was excited. I'm like, "That's a trout." He's like, "Oh man, that's huge." He's like, "Yeah, I've seen him that big before." It turned out to be a 28.5-inch, 8.5-pound trout, which is the biggest trout I ever caught up until this point in my life. And it was funny because my buddy, he went down to the other set of canals, and he actually caught a 6-pound trout on that run. And I was calling him because I wanted pictures. And he was fighting that trout. He ended up catching it, taking a picture, and he's like, "Man, hopefully like he didn't fall in the water or something." He's trying to call me to get help or something. And he paddled over, and he was like, "Oh, you're okay." He was kind of mad at me for doing all this. And I was like, "Man, this is worth it." Hold up the trout and got some pictures. And so, yeah, that to this day, that is the most memorable experience that I've had. And of course, the biggest one. And then when you catch big trout like that, you can't forget those times. But that is what you can get if you know how to fish these lights.
Right.
So I think this is a good way.
My biggest trout comes from night. I say about 80% of my biggest trout come from night fishing. My biggest trout do come from night fishing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and obviously, John in the last episode was talking about some of the big trout that he's caught out of the overhead lights. But these night fishing opportunities can give you some of these experiences where you can not only target these big trout, but also you can see them. In my case, right. I saw it.
Yeah.
So, whenever we talk about green lights, and actually let's kind of backtrack a little bit. For some of our viewers who are not familiar with green lights, how about you, Merriel? Explain what the green light is and what does it do?
It's a green light. It's in the water. No, I'm just kidding. Man, we could talk about this for hours on how to. One of the unspoken, before we even get to green lights, right? One of the unspoken things, and maybe we should have a session on it, is about positioning yourself when you're kayak fishing. How important it is to be in certain positions to optimize you from hooking up. And learning position goes hand in hand with working these lights. Being in the right position when you come up to this light or even assess the light, make sure that you're not going to drift over or, the wind's not going to push you into the lights and then you ruin what was there. So seeing stuff happen before it happens is kind of the thing. It's like, hey, look, I know the wind's taking me this way. If I get too close this way, it's going to drift me right into the lights. So,
So one of the things, and I guess I just want to lay out the kind of the image for some of our listeners who don't know what green lights are. So a lot of the residential areas who have canals or piers and stuff like that, they actually put out underwater green lights. So what happens is these underwater green lights, they turn on at night. They illuminate the water, and it does the same thing as from our previous episode, what John was talking about, bringing some of the food chain to those lights. So in this case, the underwater green lights, or sometimes they're different colors, but they're mainly green. They bring up, small shrimp and stuff like that to these lights, minnows, And then the bigger fish, the ones that we're targeting, such as trout, redfish, and flounder, they'll go to these lights and you can target them. And what Merriel was talking about is there's a lot to, it's not just a matter of finding a green light and fishing it. There is a lot of strategy. There's a lot of things that go into fishing a green light. And I think, John, wouldn't you agree? Like the cardinal sin, and of course, some of y'all already know this, but the cardinal sin is obviously don't toss into the middle of the light.
That's right. That's right. And you know, with the green lights, you know, when I look at it, you know, it's like a mosh pit. You know, they're just going in circles and circles. It's like a big party, and they're in a trance. You know, and yeah, it's pretty cool. I like it.
Yeah, and also it's like that was a really good description of the lights. Sorry to get into detail. Thank you, John. Thank you, Jonathan, for explaining that. So I always say when you come up to a green light, I'm just going to dig right into it. So when you're coming up to a green light, positioning yourself before you even make a cast, or positioning yourself to assess a light, because sometimes if you see the bait scattered, 9 out of 10 times I won't even cast in it. Or if the bait's just moving real slow, I won't even cast at it. I won't even if I see a big old shadow on the bottom. Most of the times, I'm not going to waste my time on that. But now, if I see them in a tight circle and they're swimming real fast, or obviously if they're getting ambushed, like John was saying, like a mosh pit, they're just getting tore up. Yeah, obviously, you know, you have higher odds of hooking up on those kind of situations. But I always assess the light, like which way is the fish positioned. Sometimes they'll be positioned a certain way with respect to the tide movement, whether it's incoming or outgoing, right? If you look, you know where your water source is coming in. Say, for instance, a canal, the main canal that brings in the water. Are they facing, you know, towards it, or are they facing the other way? So falling tide, if they're facing their backs towards where the water inlet is coming, or are they facing towards where the water's coming in, which would be the incoming tide. I said that right. Falling tide, incoming tide.
Yeah.
Hopefully I said that right.
Yep.
So, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that basically, you know, positioning a fish is also very is important. And one of the ways, like you mentioned earlier, positioning your kayak, or if you happen to be even on the dock, right there, positioning how you're going to make your cast and presentation is important as well, because these fish, while I found it very rare for green lights, but on occasion it is like this. But basically, if you spook them, they're gone.
Right. Most of the time, yes.
Yeah.
And that's what I was gonna say. Sometimes you have that one shot, and that one shot you got to make it count. You know, because once they move, once they get scared, you don't know when they're gonna be back in those green lights.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes you're fortunate and they reset. You know, you give it a while and then they come back. You know, but you know, most of the times, at least for me, they don't reset. You get one shot, like John was saying at them. You get one shot at them, and that's generally speaking. I know some of you guys are like, oh man, I'll fish one light all day and catch a limit, and maybe you're fortunate with those lights, but for the generally speaking, that we're trying to give you guys information. But I always say assess the light before you even make a cast. Sometimes you get so anxious and nervous and you're like, oh, I want to cast because all the fish are blowing up. And then you catch the smallest redfish or a deep trout out of that because you know, you don't have a game plan. I like to look at the light and then see where the bigger ones are at. And sometimes I'm like, oh, they're chasing shad, or oh, they're chasing shrimp. I always have a shrimp tied on and I have a shad tied on, always. And a top water and then a fat boy. But for lights, if I were just to fish lights, I'd have a 3 baits. I think we talked about them too. It'd probably be the same 3 baits you fish with overhead lights: a shrimp, a shad, and a yozuri, or subsurface bait. But those instances, I always like to see, okay, first of all, what are they eating? How are they positioning themselves? Where are the bigger fish, or maybe just a fish that I'm trying to catch, right? Because sometimes it's like, man, I don't want to catch these bull reds. I mean, I've caught them before. They break off my line or they get tangled up in the pylons. I want to catch a keeper redfish. I don't want to catch the biggest fish in the light all the time. You know, sometimes I'm trying to catch the eater size ones. Sometimes when I'm working certain area, me and some clients will go out and we'll target 17, 18-inch trout, and we'll throw back all the 20+ trout. We're not trying to. We know how to catch the bigger ones, but we're trying to catch the ones that we want to eat. So it's really assessing the light and having a game plan of what you're trying to accomplish. Like, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. So I'm trying to catch these fish and these lights. So let me assess it before I just blindly cast in it, you know? And these fish, believe it or not, they have a pattern to them. And if you sit there and you watch them, you'll see that pattern. And then you'll notice, okay, I see that big old trout. Man, I love seeing big trout at night. I mean, it's just, it never gets old. When you pull up to the light, your heart starts beating. You see this mass body, and you look at the silhouette of him, and he's coming up, and you see the spots, and then you see the body type, and you're like, oh, that's a massive trout. I've seen more big trout at night than ever. But I mean, it's man. But anyways, sorry to go off subject. They have a pattern to them. So try to figure out that pattern or what they're doing. Sometimes they're just swimming from light to light. They're not even swimming in one light. They're just cruising along. But you won't know that until you watch them. You're like, okay, well, let me go catch him at the next light. He passed these two. Let me go catch him at the other one. He's swimming that way. And you get in front of him and you present that bait right there in front of him. And right when his nose, you meet it right there in that bait. And he's in that quick mouth, you know, bam, he wants to eat that. Or he's chasing it and you bring it and you're ripping it across and boom, he smokes it. But your bait is in the right area for that fish.
Yep. So, yeah, and there's obviously a lot of these strategies that go into it. But actually, one of the things I actually want to discuss, and maybe, John, you can start out. To you, besides obviously whenever you can, when do you think the best time to go fish these lights is?
For me, the biggest trouts that I've caught was also at night, but there's a pattern I follow. So if you're talking about muds, I started around October, and around October, man, the big females, I mean, they're ready, they're hungry, you know. So starting from October and the winter months, man, that's when I catch the big ones. And usually, man, it's a lot of big females out there. So
yeah, and actually, a lot of people don't realize that even though when it's cold outside, you'll still catch those trouts in those lights.
Yeah, I heard there was some crazy guide out there taking people fishing in that cold, freezing weather. I don't know. Maybe I might have heard of him.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
He might have went live a couple times in that cold weather.
and you know, another thing before Facebook, you know, I had my fishing log with me, because usually every year the pattern is almost the same. You know, every month, okay, I know what I'm gonna catch. You know, and the good thing about Facebook is that Facebook reminds you what you did a year before, 2 years before. So you'll remember, okay, this is what I caught around that time, around that season. So,
yeah, I'm guilty for not keeping a logbook. Yes, I'm guilty. Man. I do not keep a logbook. I'm guilty for that. Yeah.
If you learned anything today from this podcast, keep a logbook.
Keep a logbook. Yeah, sorry guys. I just go out there and.
But for me, actually, one thing I wanted to bring up, and this was my strategy. So during the fall and winter months, I mainly fish during the day because I don't like dealing with the cold. But I mean, if the fishing is good, I'll deal with it. But
you'll sacrifice.
Oh yeah. So one of the things I found was one thing is to find a big complex of lights. One of the things that, because you sometimes, like Merriel said and John said, you only have that one shot on that one light, and of course it'll take some time. I find they do reset, but it takes time, whether it's going to be 5 minutes or it's going to be an hour. So you need to find an area where there's a lot of lights for you to target, because you can fish one light. If you mess up, it's okay. Move to the next one. If you catch a fish there, that's good. Move to the next one. But of course, with night fishing becoming very popular, I rarely, if ever, fish during the weekend on these lights, because you're competing with all the other kayakers and all the other fishermen, the people who own the houses. They'll be fishing their lights, and we'll go into a little bit of etiquette a little bit later. But
good point.
But yeah, but whenever you are, you want a bunch of options for you. That way, that you can continue to work these lights, and if they're working one way, then you have these options to choose from. So during the weekdays, which is when I like to do it, there's not many people on the water. You have all these areas to choose from. And the other thing is to basically make a circuit. The reason why you want these is, so my buddy and I, we would choose one side. I always, you kayak as a group. So I went with my friend. I would take right side, he would take left. And eventually we would just go off and then go off and do our own thing. And we kind of meet each other in the middle. And then you just keep doing all these canals, and eventually you switch. So eventually now you end up on the left side, and the other one who started on the left will end up on the right, and you start over. And of course, along the way, you'll find, one of the things you'll find is that one of these lights is better than the others. This one has a fish, this one has a dinks, and you kind of start skipping them. And after like 2 rounds of this, then you start dialing it in. And like I said, at that point, we were keeping the fish, so I was keeping all the keepers. And then after that, that's when we start catching and releasing. I know this light right here has those reds that come back, and then that's when you'll catch those.
And can I add something to that too?
Yeah.
And sometimes before a trip, or if I'm canvassing an area, sometimes I just drive at night and see which houses has the green lights. And but the most important thing is, first you got to see where the closest boat launch is. Because if you have nowhere to launch, then that's a major issue right there. But then as soon as I find a house that has a green lights, I would go to my Google Maps, I would drop a pin, and so when I'm ready, when I'm launched, I know where they are.
Yeah.
So, and it's good,
Don't you? I'm sorry to interrupt. There's some spots where we actually walk up to green lights and we fish them, and it's the other end's public access land, or some of them it's just public land, and you just walk up to these lights and you catch your keeper redfish and keeper trout. I'm here in Corpus right now. I have a spot where I always catch limits of trout. I just walk up to this spot, and the thing is, like, when people are fishing it, it's like, man, they don't know how to fish it. They're throwing pyramid weights and dead shrimp on the bottom, and then I'm over here like throwing these little shad baits and I'm nailing them. And usually there's not a lot of people there, but I'm gonna give it a shot tonight. But yeah, there's some spots over there in Houston and Galveston where you can just walk right up to a green light and catch you a keeper redfish or a trout.
Right. And I was going to add, always have a backup plan, because, you don't know once they get spooked if they'll come back, so always have a backup plan.
Disclaimer, we do not condone trespassing on anybody's property, even if there are good fish at that light. So just make sure, just letting you know, we don't condone that.
No.
I mean, I will admit I'm guilty of it back in my youth, but I'm telling you now, don't do that. So
no. I clearly said public land. You're walking on.
You did say that, but that does bring
just
me.
Just because I said it doesn't mean it's really. No, I'm just kidding. I'm teasing.
But that does bring me to some of the etiquette that we should talk about, because there is kind of a process and a system and just being a good overall good person to fishing these lights. So John, I know that we were mentioning it earlier. Actually, our last conversation, we kind of didn't go into the etiquette of overhead lights, but in this case, what etiquette would you recommend to kayakers and people fishing out on these green lights?
Well, with the green lights, usually when I see, if I see, because I've seen a couple of times kayakers are there, the boaters are there. When I see that scene, man, I'll just go to a different spot, because I mean, one person can ruin it for you, the other person can ruin it for you, and with that crowd, I'd rather have fun fishing than fight through that crowd. Right. And plus, can fishing be that good that they're clumped up over there, and I don't know, because one house that's really well known, the guy just turned it off. He never turns it on anymore, because at one point, one of the kayakers went on his dock and started fishing there.
Oh,
Deep
dang.
hole
And-
part.
And,
I wasn't going to say anything, but
Deep hole part. What? I do exactly what you're talking about.
and you just see it, man. Like his dock is full of lures and stuff, and he
Dude,
just doesn't turn
that
it on
light
anymore.
was epic for years, dude.
Mhm.
That light, I mean, for many, many years, that light was epic.
Mhm.
Epic. And
And
then,
that's in the Deep Hole Park. That's the overhead one.
yeah. Oh, Jackie's Brick House. That's her dock. Yeah. Yep. But anyways, we missed that light, and hopefully she can get it back on.
But
Sometimes every now. No, there's actually not even a light there anymore, right? Is that,
no. I mean, the light is still there. The overhead light is still there, but they don't turn it on anymore. But then, if you know that spot, there was a big boat parked next to it. I mean, a couple of paddles down, and
Right.
the guy had green lights like around that big boat.
Yep.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. So
He shut those down too.
no, that one he does turn it on here and there, but when
Okay.
when he had that boat there, it was on every night. And
Yeah.
it produced. It produced.
Yeah, it did. I think I did a video there one time, and I had my foot. That's the story where I had my foot on the pylon, and I'm pulling this red fish, and he's all up in the pylon. Like, I got my foot. Roy Ramirez was there, and then I was one of the live videos. I said, "Oh, a guest celebrity's here, Roy Ramirez." I had my foot on the damn pylon, pulling this red fish out, zigzagging inside the pylon, and I'm just pulling him out, and I'm like, he's gonna break me off any minute now. But no, he actually came out. I kept the tension on him enough, and yeah, he came out, man. And I did have a little bit of confidence because I put brand new braid on and a brand new leader on, so I had a little bit of confidence, but I was still kind of nervous that it was gonna snap. But I was like, oh, I'm gonna muscle him out, and I did. I mean, because there was plenty of bull reds around that area at that time, and I was gonna catch another one. So I mean, they were breaking off left and right, anyways.
And not to go off topic, but did you have any problems with the sea otters?
No, because they kind of hang out at the another area close by that I don't want to bring up. But yeah, they hang out thick there. They hang out real thick there. And usually when they're there, I don't even fish in that area. It's just like they kind of ruin it for me.
I agree.
That's the first time I heard one hiss, and it scared the heck out of me.
Oh yeah.
It was night, and I just hear this horrible hissing noise. But actually, with the light turning on and off, actually, I did want to bring that as something that is to consider. I've found, and maybe you found something different, but I found that established lights are always the best. Mm-hmm. Like the ones in Galveston for the homes that that I fished, they always turned on at night. They're never off. They're always turned on, so the fish always know that they're going to turn on, and they always come there. I found that setting up that some people will bring their own green lights out there and set it out, and yes, that can bring in some fish, but you're basically starting the whole food chain from scratch, waiting for these the bait fish to come in, and then the trout and the redfish and the flounder to come in. Whereas these established green lights, which are always on at the same time every night, they know, the fish know that they're going to be there. Have y'all guys found anything different than that?
Yeah, no, that's right. There's some other things I like to add. What I also like is sometimes the green lights that are closer to the big mouth inlets, or like around where the big water comes in, those green lights usually are really good. Or the green lights that are so low and there's no other green lights like really close by, and if they're like so low by themselves for so many lights, like they're kind of by themselves, those are pretty productive as well. And there is some lights that I say that man, to this day, I say, hey, man, we're going to this area to catch redfish, and we always catch redfish. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the depth there, and it's not like it's like at the end or the beginning or anything like that. It's just this one area. Redfish like to hang out there, and sometimes they like to hang out in certain areas. It's just... Yeah.
And you know, with the green lights, you know, it's like they know their pattern. They know where the food
Right.
they know where the food
Right.
source is going to be. So, you know, it's like they know what time that light's going to turn on, and as soon as you turn them on, you know, they're ready. They're ready to
Yeah.
feed, you know.
Yeah.
And another thing, when you mentioned Merriel earlier about the pyramid weights, you know, I don't recommend any bottom fishing because I've seen a lot of green lights move. You know, it's
Right.
like,
Right. Right.
man,
No. Yeah.
they just
Definitely. We
drag that green
definitely.
light.
Yeah, definitely. Etiquette. One of the etiquette points of that is I never cast over a green light. I'm always on the outside of it, or I'm on the inside. And if I am on the inside, I'm not reeling it slow. I would have to position myself in a kayak where I know, hey, the dock's here, the light's here, so I know the cord's going to be right there. You know. So you kind of have to know where the light is at, where the cord's going to be, and don't drag your lure. If you're going to drag your lure on the bottom, drag it on the outside of the light, where it's on the outside of the channel. Because if you drag it over that light, you're going to hang up that light, and then they spend $300, $400, $500, and boom, you know, you blew out their light bulb or you caused an issue. I've been with somebody that they hooked up to a light and it shut down a whole series of lights.
Oh no!
And I was like, man, you got to be kidding me. He's like, man, they were biting on the bottom. I was like, yeah, but you don't reel on the bottom. So, you know, that was a lesson learned for him that day. But, you know, it happens. But let's try not to make that happen. You know, if you learn anything from this, let's not mess up these lights that these people spend all that money on, you know, and that we take advantage of, you know. So, you know, that's part of the etiquette is being mindful that somebody else put money into that water. I'm not saying they own the water, not saying that by any means. I'm just saying it's just being respectful, you know, and etiquette is like, hey, let's not ruin something that somebody else spent hard-earned money on.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, each one of those lights, depending on what model that you have and where you got it from, you know, they run $400 or $500 each. So they're not cheap by any means. And you definitely don't want to mess anything up. So I have on occasion like snagged the light on the bottom. If I'm snagged on it, I cut it. That's it. You know, that's done. Same with lures on their dock. If I happen to hit their dock and it gets stuck, if I can't get to it, it's theirs now. So but
some of these comments are hilarious. These guys. These guys are jokesters, man.
Yeah. So anyway. So actually, I wanted to read this one because it's hilarious. So Justin, apparently, he likes to swing pyramid weights into the middle of the light as hard as he could so that he can make a nice splash to attract the fish. That's a pro tip right there.
From good old Justin, man. Me and Justin go way back, dude. I think me and Justin, we go way back. We're testing Yozuri lures, trying different stuff. Like we're changing the hooks on them. We changed the hooks on them and see if it changed their action on the lures. Man, we did all kinds of things with them. But yeah, that was one of the ones we studied, and usually the recommended.
I go way back with Justin too with Yozuri.
Yeah. Hey, nice hat, by the way, John Lou.
Oh yeah, who do we have to thank, brother?
This one is Jose's. He left it doing a job somewhere, and I was like, man, I guess he doesn't want it. I think I got it for him.
And I just want to thank Jose too, because this was his backup hat. So
I guess he doesn't like it. He keeps leaving it everywhere.
Yeah, Jose, if you're out there, just make sure to pick up your hats from these two guys. So before we get off topic even more, actually, I one of the things that we should discuss as well is, besides these green lights, is the overhead lights whenever you're kayaking. And I think that's also a really good opportunity because a lot of these fish will go to these overhead lights. Some of them are not even that bright. They're just overhead hanging lights that it's like a street light hanging out into the water. And for some reason that will attract, well, I know why, but the fish will be there as well. But some of these houses as well, or these piers, they have these really powerful overhead lights. And I actually think that even though you probably won't see the fish as well, I think that some of the better fishing can be in these overhead lights, because the trout when I target them, they won't be spooked. You can literally just throw across that light and just burn it across, catch a fish, and then throw it back out, and you just keep catching fish until the fish are done.
And I was about to say that, because the overhead lights, they don't get spooked easy. You can keep casting and they'll be there, but it's, with green lights, it's just a different story.
Yep.
Man, I get some people that they don't even care about the size of the fish that are in those lights. Sometimes they just want to hook up and catch fish. And sometimes there's big fish in there and sometimes there's small fish. And man, I had clients, they'll just sit there and say, no, hey man, let's go catch some bigger ones. Like, no, I'm going to stay right here. Like, this is what I came for. I came here to catch a whole bunch of fish, and I'm going to catch a whole bunch of fish. And they'll stay there in that one light and just catch a whole bunch of 13, 14, maybe every now and then a 15, 16-inch trout. And that's all they want, and then, those are good days to have sometimes when you're having rough days, like targeting those lights, and like, man, I just want to hook up and catch something, and.
And can I ask you both a question?
Yeah, go for it.
I wanted to see how, if you guys ever experienced this, because there's an area in Galveston where, it's like a dead end. The water, there's no way of that water flowing, but then there's green lights there. And, I mean, sometimes, they'll be there, sometimes they're not. But if they're there, I mean, you just have that one shot, but it's not as good as when the water's flowing, like areas where the waters are flowing. To me, I think the fish likes it where the water's flowing, because I think they have ways of escaping.
Definitely. Yeah. Without a doubt, if you had the opportunity to fish canal lights, fish it with tide movement.
Yeah.
When you're fishing it it's very different. You can do it. We've done it. We've caught them on slack tides, but you're more likely to catch more fish when the tide's moving. Like, go ahead.
I was gonna say, on a slack tide, it's those established lights that have the fish, that will still have the better chance of having the fish,
right?
Because they're always on and they'll be there. But like you said, that tide movement is key to catching those better quality fish. And actually, I can go out and say, if you want to do really well at tiki, you really need that tidal movement. So.
Yes. Yeah. That and Bayou Vista seems to be very popular recently.
Yeah. We're dropping spots here, so
we dropped some good spots, like Deep Hole Park and stuff like that. Good ones. But too bad it's not on no more. Yeah.
Jonathan, how'd you know I was talking about Tiki Island, man?
I could say that I think Merriel and I we've been a lot of places. So.
Yeah. You know what's funny is I always get somebody like, oh man, you don't know this area. Like, no, man, you don't know this spot. And I was like, just describe it briefly. And then I'm like, you mean Sia? You mean Tiki, the backside. Oh, they're like, what? How do you know that from the little description? Like, dude, I fish every lights from here all the way down south. Oh man.
But another thing for the overhead lights, I think that one even is just as important for positioning as well, because you can't, if you run over them, they're going to be gone. So that is something to consider as well. But with tidal movement, I think that's also a good way for us to go into fishing out on the flats or open water at night, because you need tidal movement to do that. So
yes.
A friend of mine, he actually told me that, and this is the best way that I have had someone describe it to me. Fishing at night is the same as fishing during the day. You just can't see. So
yes, I would agree with that.
Yeah. So you can go out to the same flats that you normally do, the same areas that you normally fish. And whatever you do during the day, if you do it during the night, you probably will catch the same fish. It's just slightly more difficult because, as humans, we are very visually oriented. And one of the things when at night is that you don't have light to see and everything looks completely different at night. This is a side topic because I'm going to go off. Before you go out fishing at night, practice casting at night. Mm-hmm. It is much more different and much more difficult than what you normally would do. Luckily for me, growing up, I had a pool and I could go out at night and I cast it in my yard and cast it into the pool. So whenever I went out, I actually had that experience. But I know I've been out with multiple people who I took them out at night, and their first like dozen casts were into the dock, wayward, out of the light. They weren't doing accurate casts. So
Yeah.
So
if you can in that situation, try to get you a nice couple casts before you make your first cast, so you can kind of feel how heavy your weight is and how your cast is going to be.
Yeah.
That's actually happened a lot, is where people first get to their first line and then that sucker zooms right onto the dock, or they zoom way past, or they hit right into the middle of the light, and it's like, it's definitely get a couple practice casts in there. Good point, Jonathan.
And to chime in with Jonathan, what Jonathan said, whatever you can catch during the day, you can catch it at night. But I've also got a feedback, and this is from a cousin, man, from a blood. They said night fishing, that's cheating, man, because the fish comes to you during night fishing. You get to pick what fish you want to catch. That's cheating, After that, I disowned him. So
good. You don't need that negativity in your life.
You don't need that negativity. No, it's just to me, it's just a different method. But if you want that challenge, go out to your favorite flat at night and try to catch trout or redfish. And Merriel, I think you have a lot. I don't have as much experience doing this. I have done it and I've done well, but I think you have much more experience in this. And going out onto these flats and just fishing at night, how would you describe that? How would you, somebody new trying to get into that, what are some tips you would tell them?
360 light. Make sure you're visible. Make sure you have your safety equipment, like your whistle. Make sure you have stuff first, safety first, and bring someone. Don't ever go by yourself, and try to go with somebody that's experienced and knows the lay of the land, because last thing need to do, and I've had somebody call me, and I don't know if he's on here or not. He actually got stranded on a big old flat. So he went out there and the tide was coming out, and he just kept paddling, and then boom, he was stuck on the flat, and he had to wait for the tide to come back in, and we're talking about hours. And he finally waited for the tide to come back in, and he got back home. So somebody that knows the lay of the land of what you're going, where you're going, and what you're doing. Sometimes the tide's different in day than it is at night. So make sure you do your homework. Right. So do homework before you do that. And then once you do it so often and you keep doing it, just like anything, the more you practice, the more better you get at it. I like targeting guts, drop-offs, and reefs at night. Like my favorite thing, to be honest, is reefs. Reefs at night is probably one that reefs and structures, things that I like to target at night mostly. In pitch black, no lights, no nothing.
Right. And can I chime in on that? Like what you said earlier, about safety, always check the weather, monitor the weather. Right. And usually if I'm out there at night, I don't go out when I know there's going to be pop-up showers out of nowhere, and
I'll fish in pop-up showers. That lightning is something I won't do, but I pop-up showers for sure.
Well, man, one of the spots actually you revealed, Merriel. It was like probably 2 years ago. You revealed it, and I got stuck there out of nowhere. There was a weather change, and the wind started blowing. So man, I started paddling close to the rocks, and I hung on to them until the winds passed me. But that was it was scary. It was at night. And but you revealed it, that spot. But and another safety thing that I always do is that I do have my paddles, but then I do have a spare paddle just in case something goes wrong. If I lose it, I have a spare paddle with me. So.
And a communication device.
That's right.
Whether it's your cell phone, some people use radios if you're in a situation. There's some radios that has your coordinates on it. Just don't get lost. You go somewhere with the lay of the land, most likely you won't need that.
And actually, just to add upon that, fishing at night, whether you're in the green lights or fishing out in the open flats or the guts and whatever, it is a completely different experience than what it is during the day. Like I mentioned earlier, we are visual creatures, so you can be fishing the same location that you fished for 20 years. and go out at night, and it looks completely different. And
Absolutely.
also, it is very easy to get disoriented at night. Whenever you leave the shoreline and you paddle out, you can pick a reference point, but that reference point can get lost to you. And there have been instances in which kayakers will go out and they actually ended up getting lost and paddling further away from where they're supposed to go because they're just that disoriented. So definitely bring somebody else with you, and just keep this, keep safety on top of mind. We all love fishing, but we don't want to lose anybody for fish.
Yeah, and definitely know your limits. Because sometimes when you test those limits, it can get you in trouble.
So
yes,
let's get back to the tips and of fishing at night. So Merriel, you said you like to fish those reefs and stuff like that. Do you what do you look for whenever you're out there? For me, my best experience was just like it was very obvious the fish were there. They're blowing up.
That's the same thing. That's what I'm looking for.
Okay.
Same signs: fish, mullet, shrimp getting tore up. I mean, man. It makes me just smile thinking about it. When you're rolling up and then you just see them just ambushing bait and just terrorizing them, you just know it's going to be a good day. Like you just like, man, that's what all of this is for. This is why I came here. I knew it. Like you did your homework, and then you just see that, and it's confirmation, and you're going to catch some big trout. You're going to catch some big fish. It's a feeling I can't explain. So I just smile thinking about it, But yeah, it's the same sign. Same signs. That's what I'm looking for. Blowing up bait, explosions,
And whenever you go out night fishing, and this is for the people who haven't experienced this, I would highly recommend catching fish on top waters at night. It is a completely different experience than during the day.
Yes.
Because you see that blow up and you have that excitement, but this time you don't see anything.
And your line goes tight.
Your line goes tight and your drag peels. And a lot of times it's like in the middle of a twitch. So all of a sudden it feels like that rod is being ripped out of your hand because the fish hit it so aggressively and you're not ready for it. That to me is the ultimate adrenaline high right there. Night fishing with using a top water.
Yes.
Yep.
And you just hear, just hearing it, just
Yep.
And your drag is just, you're like, oh, he's on.
Yep.
Yeah, it's nothing like it. But sometimes you can get overcommitted. I'm guilty of that. I've been overcommitted. And now they'll blow it up like a million times, and you're still like, they're blowing it up still, and you're not hooking up, but you're so, hooked up on the blowing up part. You forget that you're there to catch fish too. Maybe change up your presentation, but who knows?
And I want to add on to this too is that I like checking the charts, because there's some areas outgoing tide's the best. There's some areas, incoming tides are the best. So sometimes in different areas, it depends what tide is coming in. So I like checking the charts.
Yeah, man, I've actually got to the point where I look at the charts, the tide movement a day before and a day after, because I think we're so focused on the daily chart that we lose focus that there was a bigger tide before that or a smaller tide before that, and then there's one coming, and these fish already know these tides before they actually come. And why I'm sure of that is because I've been out there and they start staging and they start doing stuff and the tide hasn't even changed yet. And you're like, wait, well, what's going on? What are these fish doing? Why are they staging like that? And then boom, it happens. So it's like these fish are more attuned to the moon phases and what the tide's going to do before it even happens. And they're more attuned to the moon than we are. Right. And I think I actually look at it more than just our daily charts. Just to add on to what you said, John.
Right, and I was gonna say that too about the moon. The moon phase has a lot to do with fishing, right. and I look at it, like see how big the moon is, how small the moon is, do you guys want to share what kind of charts you guys use?
I use tides for fishing. That's the ones that I use.
Yeah.
Is it accurate? It's accurate enough for me. Sometimes you have to put with respect to wind, right? Like, oh yeah, it shows a good incoming tide, but we got 25-mile north wind coming in. Yeah, that's not gonna happen.
Right.
So
And that's the same charts I use. To me, tides for fishing, it's simple and it's like right to the point, and it tells you the tides, how do you say, lunar?
Yeah, so lunar
charts. And as much as possible, if it's slack tide, man, I'm gonna avoid slack tides, because I want that tide movement as much as possible.
Yeah.
And basically what I do is I use this like tides for fishing in conjunction with like the NOAA tide charts, because they're, for them, that's all they do is tidal movement and ocean observations and stuff like that. So that's, I kind of combined the two together. Yeah, another thing is, don't ever depend on the solunar things like Merriel was saying. It's not 100% accurate. It's not even, I wouldn't even say it's like 10% accurate. Sometimes it's not accurate at all.
It's like a fortune. It's like reading a fortune. It's either gonna happen or it's not.
Yeah, your best bet is to go out there and figure it out.
I've seen. I'm sure that you've had it, Merriel, but I've taken people out and they're like, "Oh yeah, 8 o'clock is supposed to be like the prime feeding time," and I'm like, "But why? There's no water moving right now."
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it's like an hour off or 2 hours, sometimes 3 hours off. It's like, man, keep in mind, most of the things are predictions.
Yeah.
But your best bet is to go in the water, get on the water, taste the water, put it in the air. No, I'm just kidding. Throw some water in the air, see how it lands. No, I'm just kidding.
But the reason why that the full moon that we like to fish during these full moons is that there's a couple reasons. One is because with the full moon you have the illumination from the moon, and that's basically, think of it like a big overhead light. So a lot of these predator fish at night, they're just as visual as we are, and even though their eyesight is a little bit better than us at night, but they can see the bait better, and they'll go after these and eat all night. Another thing is that with the full moon, because of the way the moon is oriented, it creates bigger tidal movements. For at least in Galveston Bay, you'll find that generally we have like a 2 to 3 tide day in Galveston, but during the full moons we'll have like a 4 tide day, and we have those big swings and fluctuations.
Yeah, season's also an important factor in that. Yeah, I mean, like spring or the shad hatch is one of the things to keep an eye on. We literally caught them at night, where you grab the redfish and just shad is squirting out just from their belly. You squeezing their belly, the shad just like pouring out, or catching a trout and there's just shad guts and shad thing everywhere, and the trout's all swollen, Yeah. But yeah, season's also an important thing to keep in mind.
Actually, this is a little bit off topic, but I actually wanted to address this. So Anthony, one of his questions he asked, how would you fish the day after a big full moon? The story is that after full moon, fish are full from eating at night, and there is some truth to that. And Anthony this is a great question, even though it's not really night fishing. I think this is a very good question to address. So personally, I find if I can avoid it, I would generally not fish after a full moon. But if I had to, I think that you basically have, for me, what I've experienced is you have 2 opportunities to find the fish. One is right when the sun comes up. You have a very short window where it will be like 15 to 30 minutes where the fish will be heavily feeding. And then once the sun comes up, it'll die for a little bit, and then your next big tide change, because usually once the sun comes up, I found that there's no tidal movement, or very little. Once that big next tide change comes, which is usually in the middle of the day, 10, 11, 12, or even 1, then that's when they'll feed next, and that's when that you should be targeting them. How about you? Do you agree with that, or yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that too. But if I was in a choice where like somebody booked in and said, "Hey, look, I believe that there's always a feeding school somewhere, and finding them is important, right?" So focusing on tides it's a good thing to do, but also we generalize. My opinion. This is my opinion, so I don't mean to insult anybody that says otherwise. But my opinion is there's always a feeding school somewhere. And all these schools and these fish, they have different behaviors than other fish. Sometimes the residential fish have different from the tide runners. Some fish in some areas, they have totally different behaviors than they do, 2 miles, 3 miles down the canal or something, or down the what is it? The main channel. I can't keep
ICW.
Thank you, ICW. And it's like, I always I've been in tournament day, I'll be fishing an area and I'm like, man, I feel it, dude. They're here. We're not feeding. I will load up my kayak and go 5-6 miles down the road somewhere else and find those fish, because I know if I stay there, I'm not going to catch nothing with this tide and the way the fish are behaving. And I try to go catch them in a totally different area. Right. I literally load up, pack up, and say, hey, look, let's roll out. I just, I've been too many times where you're seeing the fish, you're looking at them, and they don't want nothing.
Right. And my views with that, my opinion with that is that, fish, they'll feed, but then there's always a fish hungry. There's always hungry fish out there.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that all the fish are going to be full.
Right.
There's going to be other fish there that's going to be hungry. And as far as the moon phase goes, it's a Filipino thing, and and I hope there's some Filipino listeners here. But usually when we see a full moon, or the bigger the moon, it's going to be a better fishing at night. So, it's a Filipino thing.
Yeah, and there's certain areas that you target around. Look, man, there's a full moon out there and there's big tide movement. Don't go work a little 1-2 foot flat. There's areas you need to focus on where water is moving and fish are at, and they're going to be, So just focus on where you're successful at, and don't hone in on one spot, because fish are I'm getting off topic a little bit. Fish are kind of like us. They're not all the same. Some of them are different. They do different things. And what I'm saying right now sounds crazy, and people are like, what the hell? This dude's weird. But people made fun of me when I said, hey, look, I don't think all these fish are the same. I believe that there's fish that live here and fish that run with the tide. And now everybody uses the phrase residential and tide runners and stuff. But I mean, I'm not saying I'll be right in the future. I just believe that fish are different. We generalize on most of it, but they're different. Fish have different behaviors.
Right.
We shouldn't generalize them all the same.
And we have another question from Samuel here. Any tips for working dark reefs with no lights around?
Yes.
Yeah, good tip. So
use a soft tip. No, just kidding. I'm just kidding. Use a fast tip. No, I'm just kidding. That's terrible, right? Look, if you're trying to learn night fishing over a reef, if you are not objective to throwing live bait, I would try to throw live bait first and see what kind of fish are there. Once you know what kind of fish are there, and if you want to hone in and get better on your skills, try to throw artificials. This is how I learned. This was the root of me learning patterns on fish. I had fish down on patterns. My friend could call me and I'd say, hey man, if there's birds working right here, that's where the fish are at. Shit, Merriel, you're right. We limited out. How did you know? These fish have certain patterns in these certain areas. And I only learned that by throwing live shrimp under a cork. And so if you're not opposed to throwing live bait, I would recommend trying that. Learning what these fish do. Some of them, they'll run down a rock rowing all the way into the back of a lake. Some of them, they'll just, they'll swing around in a deep gut. They swim in a gut and they come back out on another gut, and they do different things. But if you can learn their pattern with live bait, because I believe it's a higher ratio of you hooking up, and then practice with your artificial game, that would be my advice to you on fishing a reef. Because sometimes they run through that reef. Learning that pattern is important. Are they on the back side of the reef on an incoming? Are they on the front side of an incoming of this reef, right? Do I know this reef? Do I know that, hey, this area is a higher reef than the rest of the reef, and it might closes the water column shallower, and the bigger fish like that over the deeper reef? Or maybe they like the deeper reef, to hide back into the gut because there's more predatory fish. you learn these patterns the more times you go out. Sorry, I didn't. Hopefully, I didn't lose you.
And it's good that you mentioned about the live bait, because even with live shrimp on the green light or the overhead lights, sometimes if the tide is working for me and I know that my live shrimp will drift towards that light, I just let it drift, and
Right.
once it drifts there, bam, you'll hit a fish. And the good thing
Right.
about letting it drift there too is that some of them, they'll stay there. They're not going to get spooked. They'll think that it's just a shrimp just swimming on that lights. So
yeah, and that's actually a good segue into the next question from Joseph. Is it wise to toss a popping cork with live bait under lights at night?
My suggestion is to not to throw it in the light, but drift in the light.
That's right. That's right.
Actually, I would even say I forgo the popping cork.
Mm-hmm.
Throw free line it, huh?
Free line it. If you need weight, need weight, do the split shots. But a lot of these lights, and one of the things that if you want to try it, go try it out for yourself. Maybe they'll like it. A lot of the lights I found, they are so skittish that sometimes they even if you throw your lure over the light, they're gone.
Yeah.
They get so much pressure. Or for whatever reason, having something as small as your lure go over them, they'll just scatter. So having a popping cork, which makes noise, which during the day, that may be okay, but at night, I think sometimes making that noise, you could just spook all the fish in that light and they'll be gone. So having the most natural presentation as you can. In this case, if you use your shrimp and you need some weight, just get some split shots. You can add more, especially if you know the bigger fish are deep. That way you can get it down quicker. But like I would forgo the popping cork.
And
Jonathan, I also like to mention to stay away from the light, trying to be outside the light if you're going to fish the bottom of it, so you don't hook up to the light. It's also with respect to current, right? Obviously, if you have a strong current, it'll be in your favor. But yeah, try to. We didn't talk about it much, but what's a good position? We've mentioned it on a couple of podcasts before, but I'm going to mention it again. So my best idea, if I'm coming up to a green light, is actually to go on the opposite end of which way the current is coming. That way I can pedal and stay away from the light, and then cast as far as I can without hitting any docks. So I'll position my way where I know I can throw as far as I can and I won't hit anything. And I can comb the backside of this light with no issues. And I want to be as far as I can as a bait coming to the light versus throwing right in the middle of the light. Obviously, if they're blowing up, going nuts and crazy, you're probably going to hook up anyways. But if they're staging, they're a little bit more cautious, I would recommend to throw as far as you can outside the light and bring it through the light.
And John, you had something that you were going to add to that?
Yeah, the times I did use a cork with a live shrimp, my line is about 3 to 4 foot long.
Oh, yeah.
So that shrimp is gonna hit the fish before they see the cork. So that was my method.
Okay,
that's a good one. I like that. That's a really good method, John Lou. Put extra line on it. Yeah.
And we do one more question right here. Let's see, from Phil. At night, are you still working areas? Which means, like, are you moving around, or are you posting up at a single point or a drain, or like if you set up on a reef? I'm moving all the time.
Yep. We're movers.
Yeah, I think the only reason why you should set up at a point or a drain is if you know the fish are there. Like especially at a drain, if you hear them blowing up, just set up right there and you're good to go. But I think, like Merriel was saying earlier, you want to cover water and find that fish. I think once you find the fish, like if you start catching them or you hear them blowing up, you can set down there. But with the kayaks, one of the good things about kayaks is that you can cover water. And actually, a lot of my night fishing is I will, and this is in general too, I will kayak to areas and then I'll wade them. With the case of night fishing, I will kayak, find the fish, and then I'll hop out and wade. Because the kayak is just more quicker to move around. Just use the kayak to your advantage. And as Merriel said earlier as well, there will always be fish feeding somewhere. So it's just finding those.
Yeah. And plus know the area, know the patterns of that area, because these fish, they have a pattern. So
all right, so I think we covered a lot of stuff, and I know that if we were to continue going, this episode would be like 3 hours long.
Right.
And
There's like I already thought of like 4 topics that we could have talked about, and I was like, yeah, let's not open up that can of worms right now. But we got plenty of podcasts. Yeah, we got plenty of podcasts to do. So
yeah,
we'll continue this journey and this journey that we're going on. And thank you guys and appreciate it. And remember, this is just the beginning.
Yeah. So again, thank everyone for joining us to the One Last Cast podcast. My name is Jonathan. We have Merriel here. Our guest today is John Liu. Again, we want to thank everybody because we wouldn't be doing this without y'all. This is all about learning. We learn from y'all too. Just hearing you guys in the chat and talking. And if you have any other questions or you have any comments, concerns, whatever, just drop us a line. You can join us at the facebook.com/One Last Cast podcast. We have our live stream. So if you want to watch us live, we go live on Wednesdays. We don't really have a set schedule, but we'll try to get that going. Again, I wanted to give a big shout out to the 4A printing. A lot of these towels that you guys can see if you're on live right here. These are great towels. Aaron's been doing some good work. Probably going to order some other stuff for not only myself, but for all of y'all who are participating in these live streams. And as for the prizes, I'm still behind on doing that. I will be, yeah, that's my fault. Go ahead.
I got a suggestion. I'm thinking about, so I want a Daiwa reel, and to be honest, I'm not going to cast that sucker. So I was going to do some fun stuff with it, right? Like, little joke stuff, like watch this one cast and only cast like 5 feet, and then I zip out one way out there, like look at the difference. But so let's that Daiwa reel, let's do something maybe in the future where everybody that's on this page that shares our page, one of these where we go live, everybody just share it, and then we'll do a prize from that. Can we do that, Jonathan? I mean, you're the tech guy, and I'm not gonna sit here.
Actually, stay tuned. I'll definitely be going live on Friday around noon for the previous podcast where we were supposed to give away some stuff. I will be doing that, and I will just go to our Facebook page at facebook.com/One Last Cast podcast. Just check it out, and I'll post how you can win some of our prizes there as well. So again, thank you for all joining, and we will see y'all guys next time.
Thank you, John Liu.
Thank you.
Yep.